Okay, so today we'll learn about functions of operating system. But before that, we'll just go through what do you mean by an operating system. Okay. So there are two definitions here. So we'll just go through the definition here. So the first definition says it is a system software that acts as an intermediary between computer hardware and the user, managing hardware resources and providing services for computer programs. Okay, so it is said to be a system software. So what do you mean by system software here? So when you have learned about the concept of software, you have learned two types of softwares. There one is system software and application software, right? So what do you mean by system software? Okay, what do you mean by system software? So it is nothing but it is a type of program, or it's a program designed to run a computer's hardware and application programs, acting as an intermediary between hardware and the user application. Okay, in other terms, it is a software that provides a platform for other applications to run. Okay, other applications to run in the sense like there are certain application softwares we have, like we have MS Doc, right? MS Doc, and then we have PPT and a lot of things, right? Like to play videos and all, we have VLC players, right? And then for playing games, we have certain applications that we use, right? Or for or any other applications that we use for our daily task, right? Like we have to do list, right? To do list, and there are many applications that we use, that is inside the window, that is right. So these are nothing but the application softwares. So in order to run these application softwares, we require certain program, right? And that program is nothing but the operating system. Okay, it is like a platform. It provides a platform for running application softwares. Okay, so that is the thing about this. And also it acts as a intermediary between computer hardware and the user. Okay, it provides interaction between the computer hardware and the user, or user and hardware also, you can say, right? And also managing hardware resources and providing services for computer programs. Okay, so now what is the second definition here? Operating system is a collection of software that controls the computer hardware. Okay, controls the computer hardware and provides services for computer programs. It manages hardware resources like we have CPU, memory, storage, and input output devices. Okay, it manages all these resources. Okay, and enables user and application to interact with the system. Okay, so these are the definitions. You can write any one of these definitions for 2 marks. The last in the exam. Right. I hope you have understood about operating system now. Okay, some concept about this. Now we'll just go through the functions of operating system. Okay. So we have functions of operating system. What are those? Here we have, yeah. Okay, so what are the functions of operating system? Here we have is processor or process management, then memory management, device management, file management, security, control over system performance, job accounting, error detecting aids, and then lastly we have coordination between other softwares and users. Okay, so these are some of the functions of operating system. So now coming to the first one, processor management or process management. What do you mean by that? Here in multi-programming environment, the OS decides which process gets the processor. So what do you mean by this processor? Processor is simply a CPU. Okay. So a system may have a single CPUs or processor, or some systems may have multiple processors. Okay, so this thing you should keep in mind. Okay, so it decides which process gets the process, when and for how much time. Okay, when and for how much time. This function is called as process scheduling. Okay, it is also known as process scheduling. So it has to like decide which process, why, because there are multiple processes. Okay, first of all, again, what do you mean by process here? Process is nothing but some task that has to be performed, okay, or a program that has to be executed, or also you can say, right? So yeah, so it decides which process gets the processor, okay, when and how much time, and when and for how much time. Okay, this function is called as process scheduling. So what does it does? It keeps track of the processor and status of process. Okay, so all the information related to the processor and the process. Okay, so that has to be keep track of all that. Okay, the program responsible for this task is known as traffic controller. Okay, so it is called as a it's known as a traffic controller. And also what it does is it allocates the processor. Okay, so this is very important point here. So it allocates the processor to a process. So whenever a process has to be executed, it has to be allocated to a processor. Processor is nothing but CPU. Okay, why? Because there'll be multiple processors. So which process has to be allocated to the processor, so that will be taken care by the operating system. Okay. And once the process finishes its execution, then it has to be deallocated. Okay. So it deallocates processor when a process is no longer required. So that the other process which has to perform its task can be allocated to that processor. Okay. So that is why deallocation also takes place here. Okay, so this is about processor management. Okay, so the next one here is memory management. So, what is memory management? Memory management refers to the management of primary memory or main memory. Okay, main memory is a large array of words or bytes where each word or byte has its own address. So, what it does, memory management, it keeps track of primary memory. Okay, so this is very important thing that is responsible by the operating system. Okay, it keeps track of the primary memory, what part of it are in use by whom, what part are not in use. Okay, what part of it are in use by whom, okay, by which process or program, what part are not in use. Okay, and then in multi-programming, what do you mean by multi-programming? Okay, so multi-programming is nothing but it is a technique where multiple programs run on a single processor computer at the same time. Okay, so that is why the name multi-programming. Okay, so I hope everyone already knows that. So in multi-programming, the operating system decides which process will get memory, when, and for how much time. Okay, so again, that is responsible by operating system. Okay, the operating system decides this again, which process will get memory, okay, when and how much. Okay, when and how much, that is how much memory it is required. Okay, that is, and allocates the memory when a process requests this to do so. Again, see, very important point here, it allocates the memory when a process requests it to do so. Okay, so once the memory has to be the memory is allocated to the process, right? Once the task has been done, completed, then it has to be released, right? So again, release in the sense nothing but deallocates the memory. Okay, deallocates the memory when a process no longer needs it or has been terminated. Okay, so this is about memory management, very simple. Then the next one is device management. So what do you mean by this device management here? Again, it is responsible by operating system. Device management, it manages the device communication via their respective drivers. Okay, so what does it does? It keeps track of all devices. Again, it keeps track of the information of the devices. Okay, then program responsible for this task is known as IO controller. IO controller. Okay, program responsible for this task is known as IO controller. Okay, and then it decides which process gets the device. Which process gets the device when and for how much time. Okay, so this is what it does. Okay, decide which process gets the device. Why? Because whenever a process has to be executed, right? So which IO devices, like input output devices, we have certain, like we have printers, or we have a keyboard, right, and scanners, right. So when a process has to be taken place, or it has to be performed, or any task has to be performed, then it has to, so which device it has to be allocated, right. Like some input has to be taken for certain program or task, then it uses keyboard or mouse, right, like that. And then allocates the device in efficient way, and deallocates devices, okay, so that other process can use the devices, okay, whenever it is free. And then we have next one, file management. What do you mean by file management? A file system also it is, okay, normally organized into directories. Directory is nothing but it's a folder. Okay, so here we have one directory or nothing but a folder, right? And then it may also have subdirectories. Okay, it may also have subdirectories. Okay, directory one and directory two. Okay, and then again, like it may divide. Okay, like you might have already seen, like some files there, some folders, right? Inside a folder, again you have subfolders. Again, in those subfolders, you have again, multiple subfolders, right? Like that. Okay, and each folder here may have specific files here, like as shown here in the figure. Okay, so this is nothing but this is what a directory is. Okay, and the way these files are organized, right? For such a concept, we call it as file system. Okay, file system is normally organized into directories for easy navigation and usage. These directories may contain files and other directories. Okay, and then, so what does it does? Keeps track of information. Obviously, when the files are organized in a systematic way as such, right? It's easier to track information of certain files, and then location, users, status, okay, the time the files were created, like those kind of information will be it will be easier to collect those information or keep track of those information. Okay, the collective facilities are often known as file system. Okay, and access to the file for read and write. Okay, so this is another job of file management here, right? It provides access to the file for reading and writing. Okay, and allocates the file for again IO devices. Okay, that is again file may require IO devices. That is for some task to be performed, and then once it has been done, again deallocates the file from the storage devices. Okay, so these are the points, important points of file management. The next one, uh, so what else we have is security. So what do we have about security here? Security management also you can say here, which is a very important point that you all have to explain. You can explain about this too. Operating system protects the resources of the system. Okay, resources like you have files, applications, softwares, okay, certain whatever resources you have inside your system, right? So it protects those resources, okay, and that protection is provided by the operating system. And security management is crucial for protecting the system and data from unauthorized access and malicious attacks. So this is very, very important, right? That is, the operating system enforces user authentication through password and access control lists. So lists to limit privileges. Okay, so it provides what password and certain permissions, that is in order to, so that the system would not be accessed by any other unauthorized users. Okay, for that purpose, it is very, very important, and also to safeguard the files present in the system. Okay, it's very important to safeguard. So in that case, it provides certain access permissions, etc., and also certain techniques. Okay, that is in order to safeguard the information and also the system. It implements file and directory permission to restrict data access. Encryption techniques safeguard sensitive information. Encryption, what do you mean by this term? Encryption here, it provide certain techniques here to save sensitive information in the sense sensitive information, or you can also say confidential information that has to be kept secret, right? So encryption techniques are used here. So what do you mean by this encryption? What do you mean by encryption? Encryption is nothing but it's a it's a it's a technique, okay, or it's a method to convert information into a secret code so that only authorized users or people can read it or use it, okay. It's a way of protecting data from being stolen, altered, or misused. Okay, so certain algorithms are there under encryption techniques. So those algorithms will be used in order to safeguard the information, okay, confidential information or sensitive information. And then we also have control over system performance. Okay, so what do you mean by that? Control over system performance? There's no particular notes here, but I'll just tell. So control over is about how the operating system and administrators manages CPU, memory, IO, and files to keep the system fast, stable, and fair for all the processes. Okay, so that is about control over system performance. And then we have job accounting. So what do you mean by this job accounting? Job accounting is nothing but it keeps track of the time and resources used by the users. Okay, so that is about job accounting. Okay. And then we have error detecting aids. Error detecting aids are also provided. Okay, that is why, because obviously we do have errors. Errors are nothing but bugs. Okay, so we may have bugs in the system, and in order to detect so that the system works very well, performs very well, right? So it's very important to detect the errors. Okay, and then finally we have coordination between other software and users. Okay, coordination between other softwares and users. It acts as a bridge. Okay, so it acts as a bridge, ensuring smooth communication and cooperation between the programs running on the computer and the people using them. Okay, so that is our coordination between the software and the user. Okay, so that's all. Thank you.